Hey guys, I'm here to talk to you about one of the more complex issues with writing, and that is sentences and sentence sicknesses. And I'm talking about run-ons and fragments. So if you are here for the run-ons and fragments, you've come to the right place. So let's start. Follow along on your notes that you got with me on sentences and sentence sicknesses. Now the first thing that it says is that a sentence must contain an independent clause. And if you forget what an independent clause and a dependent clause or subordinate clause is, you can go back to my website and scroll down in the classroom links and information section, and there is a video on independent and dependent clauses to help you. But I'm just going to, as a refresher, an independent clause, I'll abbreviate it IND, it has a subject and a verb and is a complete thought. Okay, so any sentence that you have has to have a subject, has to have a verb, and that has to be complete thought. And that's how teachers in the past have taught you what is and isn't a fragment. If it's a complete thought, it must not be a fragment. We're going to get a little bit deeper into that. So an independent clause is a subject and a verb, and it's a complete thought. A dependent clause, which can also be called a subordinate clause, so I abbreviate those DEP or sub, and that has a subject and a verb, but it usually, or it always starts with a subordinating conjunction. So I'm going to put that actually in here, a subcon, and that stands for subordinating conjunction. And I gave you a list of those. I'm also going to put a link to a video where a teacher made up a song for these subordinate conjunctions. I'll put that up on my website as well. It helped a lot of students in the past. So if it begins with subordinating conjunction, has a subject, has a verb, I don't want you to get confused between subordinate and subject, has subject, has a verb, then it's a dependent clause. Okay? So a sentence needs this one, but it can also have this one. Okay? It doesn't need that one though. In fact, if it is just this one, then we've actually got our first type of sickness, which is what we're going to move on to. So fragments, that's our first type of sickness. That's an incomplete thought. Sometimes it has a subject and a verb, but it just starts with a subordinating conjunction. Let me show you an example of that. Because he laughed. If I just had the phrase he laughed, then I have a subject and I have a verb. That's a complete thought. That's a complete sentence. That's an independent clause. But because I added this subordinating conjunction at the beginning there, the word because, this is now a fragment. It's a sentence sickness. Oh no, it's sick. How do you fix it? Well, the easiest way is to add the missing parts. Because he laughed, what? What happened because he laughed? Okay, so you could say because he laughed, the teacher gave him a detention. Or the teacher gave him a detention because he laughed. You could put it at the beginning, you could put it at the end. You just add the missing pieces to create a complete thought. In this case, you need an independent clause to add to this. Or you could get rid of the subordinating conjunction. And then he laughed would be a complete sentence. You would just need to capitalize he, of course, in that sentence. Okay, so that's the first type of sentence sickness. The second type is a run-on. Now, there are actually a couple of types of run-ons. A regular run-on is when you take two independent clauses, two of these, and you just put them back to back. He laughed, I cried. You have no punctuation in the middle. You've got a subject and a verb and a subject and a verb. That's two independent clauses, and you've just sort of smooshed them together. Okay, that is what we just typically call a run-on in general. Some people call that a fused sentence. So that's a term that you might use for this, a fused sentence. It's like the sentences are just fused together with nothing at all. How do you fix this? There are a few ways. I'm going to show you in just a minute. The other type of run-on, though, is a comma splice. And this is what I notice a lot of you do. And in fact, this is what got you into this group for many of you on the questions where I just separated the two independent clauses with a comma, you thought that that was correct. It is not. A comma cannot separate two complete thoughts. It's not strong enough. This again is called a comma splice. Oh, you spliced your comma. Yikes. So a comma splice is when you join two independent clauses with just a comma. This is fixed the same way that a run-on is fixed. So let's look at the ways that you can fix a run-on sentence. First, one of the easiest ways is to make these two complete sentences. So you just put a period here and now they are two separate sentences. Another way you could do it, another easy way, is to put a semicolon here to separate two closely related sentences. That's what semicolons are often used for. So you could put a semicolon. He laughed, I cried. Semicolon in the middle. Beautiful. You're a great sentence doctor. Another thing that you could do, you could put a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Now, coordinating and subordinating are two different types of conjunctions. The coordinating conjunctions are fanboys. Remember fanboys, the acronym? For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. F-A-N-B-O-Y-S, fanboys. Those are coordinating conjunctions. So you need to put a comma and one of these. He laughed, comma, but I cried, or so I cried. Okay, you would need both of those, a comma and a coordinating conjunction, because one or the other, they're not strong enough without each other. Like a married couple, they're stronger together. Okay. Another way, the last way that you could do this, is by turning one of these independent clauses into a dependent clause. How do you do that? Well, the only thing missing is a subordinating conjunction. So you can go back to that song that the teacher did, or I gave you notes on those. He laughed, maybe I'll add the subordinating conjunction because here. He laughed because I cried. Notice I don't need a comma with the subordinating conjunction. Okay, that's important. You don't need a comma if it's in the middle of a sentence. If I have it at the beginning of a sentence, because I cried, after that phrase, then you would need a comma, because this is now an introductory subordinate clause, an introductory phrase. Because I cried, he laughed. Period at the end, hard to see that. Okay, I know this is a lot of information to take in at once. So feel free to go back, rewind this video, pause it when you need to, look at some examples. I will give you the worksheets with those, and if you have questions, feel free to ask me, okay? Thanks, guys.